Welcome to the Seattle Sports Union podcast. My name is Brian the Soulman Solack. I'm joined by the Southwest Seahawk Rob English, and on the boards this week is Abraham DeWeese. And today our special guest is former Coug. I could say Coug 20 times. It's because we're Cougs, but former Coug, former NFL player, current announcer, college football, Ryan Leaf. How you doing?
I'm good, fellas. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you coming on. Thank you as always. I want to get right into it. You're a father of 2 children now, correct? Since we last chatted?
Yeah, since we last chatted, I'm assuming I had 1 at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but now 2. Yeah, we got a little girl who's about 2 years and 3 months. And so we scheduled this right during her nap time. So if I have to jump off screen really quick, she's probably stripped down to nothing and is trying to climb out of her crib. But she seems to be doing all right now. She's disassembling her pillow as we speak. So,
And may I ask her name?
Claiborne, and we call her Bo.
Okay. Very, very nice.
Cool.
Yeah. And then your oldest is MacGyver?
Yep, MacGyver Fitzgerald. He caught the winning touchdown this morning for our flag football game. It was his Jordan flu game. He was throwing up on the field in the first half and on the sideline in the second half, and he comes in on the final drive and catches a 40-yard touchdown pass to win the game.
Well, that's awesome.
That should just be par for the course for a guy with a name like MacGyver. I mean, that
Right?
should be,
He can get it done. He can get it done, yeah. I wanted to see him compete. He woke up kind of with a stomach ache this morning. I asked him if he wanted to go back to bed. He initially said, I want to go back to bed. So I sent him back to bed. And as I was climbing into the car to go to the game, all of a sudden, this little man kind of sneaks his way into the car and was going to give it a go. And I'll admit it, I didn't think he had a stomach ache when he told me this morning. And then when he started throwing up on the field, I said, okay, maybe I was wrong here. But I like to see him compete. You know, he knew he wasn't dying. He was just throwing up a bit, and he just went out and competed. That was a lot of fun to see this morning.
Absolutely. Very cool. What are you doing during the off season now that football's done? Besides family, anything else keeping you busy?
Trying to get that shallowed out golf swing right now, and I'm in a pretty good position right now. I've been getting some lessons. You know, I got some big golf to play here in the next 2 months of April and May, and then the biggie I play in the Corn Ferries BMW charity pro-am every June. And last year we finished second. So this year we're going to try to take home it's the closest thing to competing as I can get. I get to play all 3 days with a pro. My score counts. We get the highest score at the end of the tournament. We win the deal. Aaron Hicks, for the former New York Yankee, won it last year. We kind of fell apart on the final day.
Okay.
So, yeah, a lot of golf. Going to be on the USS Ronald Reagan outside Bremerton here next week.
Wow.
Speaking to the U.S. Navy, their servicemen and women. So I'm excited about that. It took me 50 years to get on an aircraft carrier. I'm going to bring my son with me. It only took him 8. So we watched Top Gun yesterday so he could figure out what an aircraft carrier was.
How cool.
The original or Maverick?
We watched the original, and then we were going to do a full day with Maverick, and he said, no, I'm good. Top Gun was good. So I said, Maverick's it's a lot more action all the way through.
I'm telling you.
I don't know if he liked the makeout sessions between Kelly McGillis and Tom Cruise, you know.
Fair point.
Tell you, Maverick is one of the few sequels that really does its original justice. I thought it was a perfect.
And the fact that he held it and didn't have it released until COVID was over, and so I felt like it saved movies in theaters, to be honest with you.
Sure.
Excellent point. What are you going to talk to them about, if you don't mind me asking? Do you have a speech you're going to?
No, I mean, usually I tell my story and I just, I try to relate to them and make them understand that they're not alone. I mean, working on an aircraft carrier that's in dry dock, you spend your entirety just living in a construction zone is what you do, and having to weather that and going through that type of adversity and then after you get through all of that, you end up most likely going to some sort of, combative area. And now with the war with Iran, that's a very real possibility come August. So, just want to try to keep them where their feet are and understand what their job is to do. And, and I just want them to be able to relate to the idea of, you're never down until it's over. You keep picking yourself back up and fighting through. And that's
Okay.
Awesome.
Okay. Right on. Rob's
Well,
got
to
some
get
questions.
into some of the football stuff, I guess I'll kick it off. A question for you, Ryan, is just easy one. When did you realize, at what point in your football life, whether it was far back as junior high, high school, you realize that you were people around you realized that you were an NFL talent, that you were going to be going somewhere. Do you remember when that was?
probably when the commissioner read my name.
Really?
Yeah, no one believed that. If you ask anybody where I grew up in Montana, would Ryan Leaf play in the NBA or Major League Baseball or the NFL? There's no one, including my parents, that would have said, yeah, that's where he's destined for, except for me. I was the only one that thought that was a possibility. And even
Really?
then I knew it was a dream, I'm the only Montanan. I'm from Great Falls, Montana. I'm the only Montanan who's ever been drafted in the first round of an NFL draft. There's more first round draft picks in the Manning family than the whole state of Montana ever. So no, there was no, maybe when we're getting closer to the Rose Bowl, and I was making a decision whether I was going to try to go pro or not.
Yeah.
That's probably maybe when it started to actually become a reality. But no, I never, I just thought it was really cool what I was getting to do.
Of course, yeah. Well, that's wild. I never would have thought that. I mean, it's such a high prospect. I thought, there would be everyone around you would have been like, "Oh, yeah, we're going to the league," type thing.
Nobody.
Wow, very
I
interesting.
think most people tried to tamper that down with me to avoid any unrealistic expectations on my part.
Wow. Okay. Very interesting.
It's not usual where I'm from. There's no one who's done it. So that
Right.
like they would be speaking it to existence in something that they have no evidentiary proof of. There's no one who had accomplished anything like that. So they were just, kid stays at home, goes to the University of Montana, Montana State, plays a few years, goes into the medical equipment business or, engineering. That's just how things went where I'm from. And
Gotcha.
so to break those, expectations and chains, there had to be a different mentality and a different attitude. And that's what I just did.
Right. Huh. How long after being, in the game did you really come to the realization that, it was more of a game, less of just a game and more of really a business? How was that transition for you?
I don't think it ever happened, and I think that's why I wasn't very successful. I just wanted to play, and I couldn't get the things that came with it, the media, the branding, all that stuff. I just wanted to be, this kid from Montana who who wanted to play football and be liked. That's just pretty much who I was. And so I don't think I ever figured that out. And I think that's a big reason why I didn't have a lot of success at the NFL level, because I just maybe wasn't willing to play the game that you have to play. And then I think I took things too personally and developed a lot of resentments and pushed a lot of people away that probably could have been incredibly helpful to me because I thought I had all the answers. Yeah, I don't think I ever figured that out. I still just think back to, that final year at Washington State and how much fun we had as a team where no one on that team, not one of us thought we were going to go be playing pro football the next year. There isn't one guy on that team that did. So everything we did that year was about each other, that team, and being the best possible versions of ourselves as we could that year. Because we all thought, well, this is the end. We won't be playing football anymore after this.
Love of the game and all that.
Indeed.
Yeah. Wow. Good, right?
Did you think that when you're playing in the Rose Bowl, did you think that the opposing quarterback was going to be a Hall of Famer? It was Tom Brady, wasn't it? Or who was?
Well, he was on the bench. He couldn't get on the field.
Okay.
Yeah, he couldn't even get on the field. So, no, I did not think that, because if you would have saw him in those string arms come out of that 10 jersey and those shoulder pads warming up, you would have said he's the greatest quarterback of all time.
Yeah.
I would have told you were nuts. So
good point.
You've been watching his pro day, right?
I mean, yeah. I mean, if he goes to Cleveland, where Spurgeon Wynn was drafted, a little bit ahead of him, have we ever heard of Tom Brady?
Probably
Probably
You
not.
not.
know, I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know. I would like to think because of the mindset that he has, that he would have been successful wherever he went. Sometimes it just takes every piece to fall into place the right way for it to happen. For him to go to New England, to have him believed in by Bill Belichick, to have Mo Lewis absolutely wreck the sternum of Drew Bledsoe in that game against the
Mhm.
Jets, where he gets to go in and play, to have that defense that's in place in New England during that time. I mean, there's just so much to go into it. What he did with it, what he was able to do every year when he would go win a Super Bowl and then go back to the drawing board and figure out how he could get better. That's what made him so great. He never just relied or relaxed on his laurels at all. He went back to work like he was, the guy drafted 199th that year and said, I
Yeah.
need to do the work. And I thought that was incredibly impressive by him. I think you saw the jump he made in the broadcast booth this year from year 1 to year 2. I think that showcases the work ethic that we saw when he was a player. You've had a lot of great players try to be broadcasters, Jerry Rice, Drew Brees, guys that walked into those, Joe Montana.
Mhm.
And you would think because of those guys' work ethics that the broadcasting of it would be very simple, very easy for them. It's not. It's incredibly difficult and you have to put in the work. And I think that some guys are just like, I busted my ass for all these years. Me talking about football doesn't take me to, a week's long of studying and things like that. It does, regardless. It's another craft. And I thought Tom Brady exhibited exactly what made him such a pro football quarterback was his work ethic this year, getting better in that broadcast booth.
Definitely. I do have to say one last thing. I probably said last time we talked, but you were robbed of that final play in the Rose Bowl. We should have had one more chance. We got screwed. I'll just leave it at that.
It could be, they changed the rule after
Yeah.
that you have to have 3 seconds on the clock to spike it. But also, we should have been better on our part of just calling a play. No, but, pressure coming down to the end. You're looking to the sideline. Everybody's yelling, spike it. If Coach Price would have just signaled in a play to me and I would have ran the play, we at least would have got the play off and I would have had a chance of throwing it at least in the end zone. What sucks about it is it's just a dead play. We tried to dead the clock instead of just give us a chance from the 26-yard line. For as good as we'd been all year long, I'd give us a pretty good odds that we'd get a shot there.
Absolutely. Rob, I
How
think
did
you have
you
another.
I don't say how did you manage per se, but what was it like, the whole, Leaf versus Manning comparison? How was that how did
I
that work in
mean,
your world?
I thought it was pretty cool, like this. I remember the first time he called me, it was back before cell phones and our SIDs had put us in touch. And all of a sudden I pick up the headset of the phone and, you hear that deep Southern drawl of Peyton Manning. And I remember kind of putting the receiver to my chest, looking at my boys sitting in the living room there in Pullman going, it's Peyton Manning, and listen, that's gone on for whatever it's been, 30 years. I've been attached to him, good or bad, whatever you want to look at it. I'm always going to be attached to him in some way, shape, or form. And I think it's a real honor. I know how hard it is to do what he did, what we did in college, and then for what he was able to do at the NFL level to become a Pro Football Hall of Famer. I mean, it's one of the most difficult things to do. I'm really incredibly proud of him. I think he easily could be someone I'm terribly resentful of that I'm not.
That's awesome.
And ironically enough, whatever you want to look at in terms of water under the bridge from 1997 to 2026, we're both in the same place. We're both old dads of young kids, boy and a girl. We're both in the broadcasting entertainment side of things. We only have our own production companies. We're big into philanthropy. And, I think that goes to show people around what success can look like. If you attach that with being a Pro Football Hall of Famer during that time, I get that. Or you don't for the person who went to prison because of his drug addiction, I get that too. But I think it goes to show everybody out there too, no matter what's happened, you can get to the exact same place of someone you feel or you would contribute to as being an incredible success like Peyton Manning, and I feel like I'm right there. So I think that's a really good way to look at things for people who have gone through anything or have struggled at times, and know that there is some meaningful solution in the life of their dreams still out there.
Right. And Ryan, and I don't presume to go too deep, but you touched a moment ago on some of your struggles. In your own words, when would you say you realized the first signs that things are starting to kind of unravel a bit?
Well, I just think, I think being addicted to pain medication is a symptom. I don't think that was the problem. I think I can look back to, and now that we have data and now that we know what symptoms look like from CTE, you can really tell a behavioral shift in me around 21, 22 years old. Significant in terms of my behavior, my response, the way I dealt with things. There was impulsiveness. There was all the things that we now know what are symptoms of CTE, but we didn't then. We saw this in the way I was told as I was lazy. I had a bad attitude. I was all these things. And so I became incredibly resentful, and then I acted out and did a lot of things. So I would argue I didn't realize it, and I don't think anybody else realized it until we could attribute it to something. And the only way we were able to attribute to anything was when I was ultimately arrested for my drug addiction. And that's when we were able to really kind of start taking a good look. You could see the neurocognitive damage to my brain. A brain tumor was found in 2011 about the size of a golf ball on my brainstem caused by trauma. There's no substance use disorder history in my family, any of those types of things. Certainly no tumors in the family history either. So I think that's when it really kind of we were able to attribute it to something so we could start actually addressing it. And then, once I got out of prison, working with the CTE and Concussion Foundation based out of Boston, the data that we receive now over the last 10 years, it's for a generation of us who've always kind of wanted the why is this happening? Why am I feeling this way? To be able to be given those answers allows you to go look for solutions then, because it's a huge facet to a ton of former players that have gone through the things they've gone through that don't have that answer, weren't getting that answer, and thought their only solution was to take their own life and no longer be here anymore. My teammate Junior Seau being one of them. I mean, it's incredible that someone with all these players with such high self-worth of themselves thought the best thing for everybody involved was for them no longer to be here. And so I think those types of things are the ones that really kind of bring the attention to it. Unfortunately, 30 years ago, no one thought that. No one thought that the hits to the head that we were taking were actually going to cause permanent damage to our personalities and to our behaviors and things like that. So the best thing that ever happened for me is that I ultimately became addicted to drugs, and I had to face consequences to those choices, which made me address the things that come with that to get help. Where other guys were not as lucky. They were able to skate by because they were incredibly successful, and people let them off for things or didn't believe them when, let's say, they ran their vehicle off a cliff saying they had fallen asleep rather than trying to commit suicide. Like, these are the types of things that when you're 50, about to turn 50, and you've been through the things I did, and you have the perspective I do, boy, are you grateful. Boy, are you grateful. So I would argue that the things that started to change were around 21, 22. I didn't figure it out until probably 11, 12 years ago, though.
Yeah, I guess you kind of got to walk through the fire, right?
I mean, you don't have to.
You don't have to.
I was just watching a podcast on YouTube earlier this morning, and you mentioned you have a superpower, Ryan, perspective. Will you explain what you mean by that?
Well, I do. I mean, like at night sometimes with my wife, I'll curl into my bed and I'll just dig in there and I'll just be like, I love our bed. I love our bed. And she's, not that she doesn't love our bed too, but I mean, she's probably pretty sick and tired of me saying it every single night, but she doesn't have the perspective I do. She didn't sleep on a steel slab for 3 years,
Yeah.
I'm on the golf course and I just hear guys complaining about how long the round's taking, and I'm like, it could be worse. And they're like, yeah, whatever. And I'm like, you could be in prison. It's a real superpower, this perspective. There isn't ever a moment where I can complain about anything. And so there is a real joyous optimism and a grateful optimism that comes with that perspective on a daily basis. Like I wake up and I am just gloriously happy because of that perspective. And so that is certainly a superpower for me. Like, there's days I don't walk through it the right way. There's days things will bother me and I won't behave the way I want to, but I also have real perspective around that too and self-awareness. I find out and I have people tell me pretty quickly, yo, Ryan, that sounds like a lot like old Ryan. And, you take a good hard look in the mirror because of it and you address it immediately and you go back to being that grateful human being. And then you're also grateful for that another chapter of messing up, dealing with it in a healthy and positive way. And when you're raising kids, you messing up in front of them sometimes is maybe the best lessons you could ever teach them. Like you don't want to be this perfect person in front of them. And you'll never be. But when you mess up, you hope they see it and I hope they see how I handle it in the way that is the way it's supposed to be handled now. That's a really, really good perspective to have as well.
Right on. I appreciate you sharing that. One more thing I want to bring up, Rob, real quick is, I don't know if you know the story, Rob, but about 10 years ago, give or take, my daughter ran away and she was doing drugs, and I'm a very religious person and I asked God what to do, and he told me to reach out to Ryan, and I reached out to Ryan on Twitter, and Ryan got a hold of me and he had me and my wife talk to his mom, get her perspective, from being a parent, what she had to go through with Ryan. And I've been eternally grateful and appreciative. I mean, I always liked Ryan Leaf, but I ever since then, it's been a moment that I'll never forget. My wife will never forget. I just want to say thank you again, Ryan. I've said that to you before, but I want to thank you again for reaching out today, and thank you to your mom, and I hope she's doing well.
Well, you don't get to keep this peaceful, unchaotic life unless you give it away. And I didn't understand what that meant when my sponsor told me that. And essentially it means if you hold on to your story, if you hold on to the past and don't share it with other people and make it relatable, you don't get that peaceful and chaotic life. You need to give it away. And so that's what I was taught, and that's what I do. So when people reach out, such as yourself, who are going through something that I can relate to, that's something maybe I can help them with, that is what we do. And that is what the last 11 years have been for us. As a family, as a person, it continues to be about. I knew the moment when I walked out of prison that it could never be about me again. Like everything had to be about somebody else. And what's ironic about it, when you make it about somebody else, your life gets better. Well, I think as a narcissist most of my life, I just assumed to make my life better, it had to be about me, right? What you could do for me, what you were giving me, what I was getting out of it. And that flies in the face of that completely. So that's been a real shift in thinking and perspective.
That's awesome. I didn't know that story, Brian. That's a beautiful thing. Only
me and the Soulman go way back.
Yeah, apparently. And to that point, you kind of touched on it already. I mean, Ryan, you've gone from the highest of highs to some pretty low depths, and then now back to the high again. In a few words, what would be really your big takeaways, or what you would tell anyone if you were standing at a podium in front of a room of people? What would be the moral of the story there?
You're gonna be okay. It's gonna hurt like hell, but you're gonna be okay. Life's hard. Life ain't fair. It's about how you deal with it that matters, period. And that's ultimately the end of it all, right? No matter what happens, you can't control that. No matter what is said, you can't control that. All you can control is your attitude, your behavior, and your effort, period. And we as human beings tend to make things incredibly complicated. It's just what we do. We complicate the hell out of everything. And usually the right choice and the best form is the simplest one. And that is pretty simple. And it's how I'm teaching my 8-year-old right now. So just like teaching a toddler, you can control your attitude and your behavior and your effort. That's it. And you may do all three of those things incredibly well. And yet you still may not end up on the top. You know, I don't know if you're trying to play football and the coach has you at second string and you've done everything. What happens when coach names you second string? Do you stop working hard? Do you stop having a good attitude? Do you stop, having a good behavior? No, you continue to do it, right? That's the difference in all of this. Like, you can control that. And so that's the lesson I just tell people. Like, no matter what's happened to you either, like, life is long. I'm hoping to live to be 100, right? Here's an 8-year span of my life that kind of sucked, but it was incredibly rewarding in terms of knowledge and experience. But from outside looking in from other people, they could say that was a harrowing 8 years of your life. If I lived to be 100, 92 of those years are going to be probably the most spectacular years that I can imagine in my lifetime. You are not the worst thing you've ever done. You are the sum of all its parts when a life is viewed at the end of it all. So just know that, you're not defined by your past. You can't go back and change it. You can start over today and change the future. I know that for sure. Because if you'd have told me 11 years ago when I walked out of that prison cell that this would be my life in 2026, I would have told you were crazy. There's no way that's possible at all. So I think, when people talk about miracles, you boys are looking at a miracle right now. I tell you that much.
That's awesome.
I want to know how you got into broadcasting. Who got you into broadcasting?
Well, that was what my degree was for at college. I was at the Edwin R. Murrow School of Communications at Washington State, which is one of the best in the business. But I did leave a year early to go pursue my NFL career, so I didn't graduate at the time. And then when my NFL career was over and I went back to Washington State to finish, one of the prerequisites, of course, of a broadcasting degree is you have to do an internship in a newsroom. And like the last place I wanted to be was in a newsroom. I was incredibly resentful of reporters, the media at all. So I just shifted my major to humanities so I could get a degree so I could go into coaching. And best thing I could have done was probably go into a newsroom, address that then and there. But I had to go through what I had to go through. Years later, when I walked out of that prison cell and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, there were 3 things that really stuck out. One was I used to put the highlight videos to music in college, and I loved what music did in movies and TV shows. Like, I thought the impact that they had on movies. So I applied to a film and TV sound editing school down in Phoenix. That was one thing. The other thing, of course, being in prison, and I was in a for-profit prison in Montana as a nonviolent drug offender, I really felt like there was a real social injustice when it came to, drug offenders in this country. And so I went and studied up and took the LSATs, and I started applying to law school. Those were the 2 things. The third thing is what Joel Klatt and Kirk Herbstreit got to do for a living. I thought was the coolest thing in the world. And so I reached out to a friend at Fox, and I asked if I could shadow Joel Klatt, and they said yes. And so for 1 year, Fox allowed me to shadow Joel Klatt and Brady Quinn, A, to see if I could do this, and B, if I wanted to, and really see if I could be any good at it. And I answered all those things. And I think I answered all of those 3 things before, the other 2 options I think could have become a reality. And so I used my broadcasting background, and I got a radio show, a 3-hour radio show on Saturday afternoons for no pay. That was out of Houston, Texas, called A Spring Game with Guy Haberman in like 2016. And for Oregon, I remember I think Justin Herbert was out and Tyler Shuck was like a freshman,
Okay.
And so that's where it all kind of started. And it's blossomed and grown immensely. I've got incredibly good at it. Like anything that I've worked really hard at my whole life, I've gotten good at it. So much so that, I'm going to be the lead analyst for, one of the networks that are broadcasting the Pacific 12 Conference again this year. That's right in my wheelhouse. I'm also going to be taking on college basketball this year as a broadcaster too. I don't think a lot of people know I played basketball at Washington State as well as football. That will lead to a new experience for me and a new opportunity to spread my wings a little bit and do a little bit more. So I think the broadcasting has helped immensely with my public speaking. I travel around the country and speak anywhere from 30 to 35 times a year, anywhere from 5 to 8 football programs a year. My wife and I built this company, this consultant and production company that we run now, and we have run for, I would say, probably 8 years. Yeah, I think that, both things really have a solid hand in hand with one another. They really complement one another and allow me to be the best version of that in both fields, and because of it.
You ever channel the late, great Keith Jackson?
I hear Keith Jackson a ton. Now, he was a play-by-play. I'm a color commentator. So, I've worked with Ted Robinson the last 2 years.
Okay.
And Ted is a legend. He's been calling games for as long as I can remember. And there are moments when in my headphones, when Ted's speaking, I would tell you that it sounded like Keith Jackson. Ted Robinson kind of has been a voice of college football, like Keith Jackson was the voice of college football for me for a generation.
Okay. Yep.
And I think for a lot of people, Ted Robinson has been that voice, especially in the Pac-12 conference.
Right on.
Who hit you the hardest? What's the hardest hit?
Well, I would argue it was in college, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah.
Darrell Russell with USC, he hit me one time in college when we were playing USC, where I was just floored. Jason Chorak hit me in a UW Apple Cup, second Apple Cup in '96. I had handed it off and I was booting out, and so I wasn't really prepared for it. I guess he thought I might have the ball, and he lit me up. I went from straight up and down to flat on my back, decleated. Concussive hits aren't actually huge hits,
Mm-hmm.
Concussive hits are usually things that you don't see coming, with your head hitting the ground or a knee hitting your head, things like that. One time in the NFL, I got hit underneath the chin and it split me from here to here against the Raiders. I think I was a Cal guy on that Raiders team. I think Reagan Upshaw was the one that hit me. Ironically enough, like 2 series later, after I'd gone in and got stitches and put the helmet back on, Darrell Russell reared his ugly head again at the time, ripped off my helmet, and tore out the stitches. And so I was like, we were wearing those white jerseys and the blood had like pooled right in the back where Leaf was. Yeah, football is it's a crazy sport, fellas.
Yeah, apparently it's a tough game, huh? Oh.
It can be, but it's so much fun. So much fun.
Brian, I hope we can pivot over to current day, a little Seahawks. Are we okay to do that?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it, Rob.
Brian, what's your read on this current Seahawk team? Obviously, we're just coming off of the Super Bowl victory and everything, and said by most to be a historic team. And then it starts the bit of the unravel, the pick apart. We lost the OC, losing fairly marquee players. Where do you see the team going from here?
That's life. Life's hard.
Mm-hmm.
No one cares.
Yeah.
You won the Lombardi Trophy, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what you have, and now it's time to go try to do it again. And you build a team, you try to build a team from year to year. It's very much like the collegiate version of teams now, built with a lot of mercenaries, a lot of free agents at the NFL level. You hope that you're able to put together a team that can come together for one season. New England had, like 38 new players on their roster this year, and Mike Vrabel got them to play together enough for 17 weeks and then in the playoffs to go to a Super Bowl. It's going to be incredibly hard to do that again. It's going to be incredibly hard for Seattle to do that again. I do like them, though. But, I think that you could argue that the Rams were a better team than Seattle this year up until the Rashid Shaheed punt return on that Thursday night. It was going the other direction. It was going to L.A. for the NFC Championship, right? So, L.A. is going to be a real, real tough out this year. They know that I think they're going to be the team to beat in the NFC West. And Seattle's going to have a target on their back from everybody. They're going to have to walk through this world as the defending Super Bowl champions, which is going to be incredibly difficult. But you guys have one of the most mentally tough quarterbacks on the block that will be behind center. I can't tell you how proud I am of Sam Darnold. I can relate to this, right? Wearing the anchor of the bust word, not living up to expectations where you go. And for him to have to wear that anchor everywhere he went, even to go and play as well as he did in Minnesota 2 years ago, only to have Minnesota say, still not good enough. 14-3. Nah, still not good enough. Seattle thought it was. They gave him a home. They supported him. Clint Kubiak did so much to help protect him and give him the utmost confidence in playing. So I think that young man will be riding high going into this offseason and into next season. I think you have a great quarterback there. Now it's a matter of, can you replace some of those defensive players that you're going to miss? Kenneth Walker's huge loss, because I don't know if I saw a better performance by a single player through 3 games during the playoffs than Kenneth Walker it was, and so the mindset in the NFL is that you can replace running backs. You can move on from them. I don't know. The performances, though, in those 3 games were so impressive, and without Zach Charbonnet available, that's what made it even more impressive for me. So should be fascinating, interesting. You have the right guy at the helm as a head coach, and you definitely have the right guy at the helm in the quarterback.
And those are the 2 key spots. I mean, you look historically over NFL, you got the coach, you got the quarterback, that usually leads to success, right? So
yes, it
we're
does.
hoping this continues.
I got one last question, but wouldn't be me without talking about Wazzu. But I'll keep it to just one. Kirby Moore, our new head coach, is he going to stay with all the, the nil and transfers, all that BS going on in college football? Is Kirby Moore going to stay at Wazzu for a bit, do you think?
I mean, you can't answer that question.
Yeah.
And if he were to leave, then you'd thank him for what he's done while he was there and on to the next guy. That's just how this works. Did he go to Washington State? No. Does he have Washington State ties? Maybe. Listen, people, Cougars exist are those that went to Washington State, right? There's a loyalty there. There's something that exists there. I don't know what it is about Washington State, the fan base. Maybe it's because we've been kicked so much in our lives, but they get off on being resentful. And I don't understand it. It doesn't benefit anybody during the process.
True.
I'm excited as hell for this new Pac-12. We dominated the teams that they'll play this year and for the next few years. Last year, we dominated them. We took apart San Diego State. What else did they play last year? Utah State in the bowl game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oregon State, they stumbled one time, but got them the second time pretty easily. So, I mean, there's a chance for them to be in the college football playoff every single year as long as the rules stay the way they are. And they will never have a better chance of going to the college football playoff on a yearly basis now than they ever did in the old Pac-12. They were an afterthought. They were never – they couldn't even win the division that they were in the Pac-12. So people talk about the Mike Leach era and all the winning. They didn't win anything.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it's important to remember that. You want to play for something? You want to play for a conference championship and a shot at the college football playoff? This is a good thing. I don't care if you want to look. You can look through it whatever lens you want to look through it. It's a good thing. And what Teresa Gould was able to do to keep this brand intact, Washington State and Oregon State were never going anywhere. Once it was done, the flirtation with some other conferences, that was never going to happen. Teresa Gould promised them she was going to build a smart, competitive conference, both for men's basketball as well as for football. And we were going to be ever present on the national platform moving forward. And that's what they're going to be. She brings in Gonzaga into a conference.
Yeah.
She brings a football conference that will immediately go to the top conference outside the Power Four. I don't think you could ask for anything more if you're a Washington State fan. And now it's important that they get the right person at the helm in terms of the athletic director to improve the game day atmosphere. The game day atmosphere in Pullman has gone to the pits.
Mm-hmm.
No one's excited to come. They complain about the hotel rates and the drive and all the things that when we were playing, no one ever complained about, right?
Yeah.
And listen, hotel Prices were through the roof then. People had to drive all the way across the country or all the way across the state. My family came from the state of Montana every week. It is what it is, and if you want to support the team and you want to have a voice in the decisions that are made, then you have to engage and you have to support. So I'll be interested to see how the fan base turns out here in year one of the new Pac-12.
Great perspective. Seriously. Hey, Rob, you got one more last question or comment?
Yeah, so I'm just curious. Are games like the Apple Cup kind of soured now with the way that the conferences have been all shifted around? Did it still hold the same significance, or does it kind of change it a bit?
It does for me. I hate those purple bastards. But listen, you come in for 1 year, maybe some guys. You hope that Kirby's able to put together a culture where you have players that come in and develop and stay over time, and like you develop that rivalry hatred with UW. You come in for 1 year and you play them once. It's just not the same thing, right? It's not the same thing as what it is when I walked on campus as a freshman and that game was circled on the schedule in the locker room. And we went out my redshirt freshman year and put in a whole new offensive game plan with 2 tight ends at home and ran over up and embarrassed them on our field. And then I was just like, okay, yeah, this is what this is like. And then year 2, I get my first start ever at Husky Stadium. Boos raining down, going up against Damon Heward, coming back, tying it, sending it into almost overtime before we lose on a last-second field goal as my first start. And I'm like, this is what this is going to be like. And then, the last game of my career as a Washington State Cougar in the regular season at Husky Stadium against UW to go to the Rose Bowl and being carried off that field in a sea full of crimson. Like, yeah, you don't think that game means something to me still? I don't care if it's the first game of the season this year. Who cares? Go out and beat their ass opening day. You don't have some cupcake like Montana walking in. You got Washington, week 1, Kirby Moore. Welcome to the party, pal. Right? Let's go. That's what I want to see. So I'm excited. I'm fired up for it. I hope everybody else is. I don't like getting 59 hung on you at home like they did a year ago. Like that's. I think it motivated the team, those 2 back-to-back games against North Texas and Washington, because they played incredibly well the rest of the way through. I think last year's team getting to 6 wins was a huge win for Jimmy Rogers and that staff. And I think it also showcased that Kirby Moore can come in here and do the exact same. He can do much better. They got an early, tough slate going up against Washington, then having to head down to Kansas State. We're going to learn a lot about this football team early on. They get Arizona at home during the season as well. So it's going to be a heck of a season.
I love the Die Hard reference. Welcome to the party, pal. Well, keeping it with the kids, I'm going to give my shout out to my own 2 kids, my daughters, Maya and Aubrey, for different reasons though. I live in Phoenix, and I'm here in Murrieta, California right now, dropping off my kids with my mother because they're going to spend spring break with their grandmother. So I'm off for the next week. And I'm happy about it. So shout out to my kids and not having to deal with them for the next week.
Yeah, my wife, she just is incredible. I'm about to hit the road here for the next couple weeks, doing the work from the business we built, and she's home and she's got so much going on. Not only is she the CFO of our company, she runs, 2 other real estate companies. She's in the process of remodeling a house here locally to try to get her dad to move into here soon. And then she's got, an 8-year-old and a 2.5-year-old that she's doing a tremendous job. So I think, constantly she's the shout out person in my life for sure. If you need to tell somebody anything, you need to get something off your chest. My socials, my DMs are open at Ryan D. Leaf, and in the website where we run our company and all our things through www.theryanDleaf.com.